Hi, my name's Phil. I like to come out politics, and the accelerated rate of authoritarianism in America is obviously showing no signs of slowing down. Kristi Noem, who's Trump's Homeland Security Secretary, sort of like our Home Secretary, has said that foreigners are not welcome at the Super Bowl and ICE will be all over the place. Trump has turned one of America's biggest events into a trap, and not necessarily just for the usual targets of ICE raids. This isn't just an extension of existing racist policy. This is an escalation. I mean, let's look at exactly what the implication is here, even for Americans, as well as how, if Trump can do this at a huge cultural event like the Super Bowl and get away with it, he will inevitably roll this out across America next year. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So let's first of all examine who Noem thinks she can exclude from attending the Super Bowl, one of the biggest cultural events in America's calendar. So she said foreigners should not attend. And I quote here, right, the people that can attend, according to her, direct quote, law-abiding Americans who love this country. So let's see who appears to be excluded here. First of all, of course, anyone without American citizenship. This means migrants who have full legal rights to live in America. I wonder if it even means people who were born overseas and attained US citizenship. Trump promised to deport undocumented migrants, and a lot of people voted for him on that basis. But this would be arresting documented migrants. But how would ICE officers even know? On what basis are they going to identify foreigners? Colour of their skin or the sound of their accent? Or are they going to get access to the ticket sales databases and run background checks on everyone intending to attend, arresting them as they turn up to the game? And if it's the latter case, then it opens up more possibilities. So Noem didn't just say that the game was only for Americans, but law-abiding Americans who love their country. Well, if we look at that statement through the lens of Trump's general attitudes, that could even exclude Americans, even white Americans, if they just happen to have criticised Trump, supported pro-Palestinian protests, or even just openly support the Democrats. And this is what it looks to me like. That's why I'd say this is an escalation. This isn't about arresting and deporting undocumented migrants or even documented ones. Noem didn't make the point that this was just for undocumented migrants at all. She explicitly barred all foreigners, documented or otherwise, from attending. It means you can't even fly in from overseas to watch the game then? So no, like, Canadian fans are allowed to even travel to watch the game in person. I mean, I know American football isn't huge outside the States itself. To me, it sort of looks like a game of rugby for people who love group hugs, but not much in the way of action. No wonder you have to get through a lot of beer to watch it. But it has its fans around the world. The Super Bowl is broadcast in other countries. And if people do go to live and work in America from overseas, wouldn't MAGA want them to integrate by getting involved in their sporting events? I mean, there are a small number of foreign players in the top teams themselves. Are ICE going to arrest any migrant players on the pitch? But in practical terms, if, as I suspect that statement of Noem's doesn't even just target foreigners, but Americans they don't approve of, then this looks like an attempt to take control of America, not just militarily with moves against cities like Chicago, although Portland seems to have a stay of execution, but culturally as well. Trump is attempting to exclude huge sections of American society from American society. And if he can get away with it with the Super Bowl, he will surely expand it next year. But let's consider how this is another escalation in the use of ICE. So before this shift, ICE's presence at large-scale public events operates under what they'd call Operation Safety. It was about identifying genuine threats, protecting the attendees from harm. Now it's morphed into something else entirely, like Operation Show Me Your Papers. On paper, the difference might seem a bit subtle, a mere tweak in nomenclature, but in practice, there's now a chasm between the two approaches. Under the old safety protocols, agents were bound by a fundamental principle of law enforcement. They needed probable cause tied to a credible threat to engage with someone. So they sort of needed specific intelligence, not just suspicion. Now, the new guidance for some months has sort of thrown that under the bus. the mere absence of an ID or even perhaps a perceived foreign accent can be enough to trigger a secondary screening. You know, there was a memo I saw in a report in San Jose media. It listed avoidance of eye contact and unattended children as behavioural indicators. I mean, let's be honest here, that's not counterterrorism, that's profiling. Very thinly dressed as security. Quite a dangerous path. It blurs the lines between legitimate security concerns, which you're going to have at the Super Bowl, and discriminatory practices, which you're going to have with MAGA. And it chips away at the very notion of innocent till proven guilty for just attending a game. You know, this expansion of this mission at such events raises questions about civil liberties, of course. I mean, civil liberties lawyers are saying, well, you know, when they're asked what happens next, they'll say, well, it's fairly clear. What happens next is people stay home. You know, attorney Sarah Hussain was saying exactly that. People are going to, like, put themselves into self-imposed exile from these events. And this is what happens, you know, when people believe that a traffic stop can end in deportation, you don't risk the drive. When a football game becomes a checkpoint, you don't buy the ticket. It's a fairly chilling effect. It's as I say, it's a self-imposed exile driven by fear and uncertainty. It creates a two-tier society where one section excludes itself from wider contact, allowing them to be more easily isolated, you know, for the purposes of the government. And here's where things get legally murky as well, and a bit unsettling, because so there's the Fourth Amendment in America, which protects Americans from unreasonable searches and seizures. But that, of course, and the courts have backed this up, you know, for obvious reasons, is that right is significantly weaker inside a sports arena. Why? Because places like stadia are considered special needs checkpoints, which means that by simply entering, by passing through, you're implicitly consenting to certain searches, like, you know, bag checks, metal detectors. It's a trade-off, isn't it? Your safety for a slight reduction in your privacy. We've all done it, or those of us who've been to sporting events. It's not a big deal. You know, it's perfectly fine in a liberal democracy because the people searching your bag are doing so from a security point of view, and you're invested in that. But when you suspect that the authorities do not have safety in mind, but social engineering, then it's different. And ICE is going to exploit this loophole. It's going to stretch its interpretation to a very concerning degree. While they can't legally haul you into a back room for an interrogation without probable cause, they can, under this expanded authority, walk you to a mobile fingerprint unit parked outside the gate. And you just think about that. So you've got pop-up immigration stations at this, Super Bowl. If you refuse the scan, you're likely escorted out, your expensive ticket unpaid, your day ruined. Comply, they might still be ruined because you could find yourself sitting in a holding cell. And it's not even about if your visa expired yesterday or there's a minor administrative issue. Noma said all foreigners, not undocumented migrants. I'll keep repeating, all foreigners. And even the line about law-abiding Americans who love their country. I mean, imagine it. Oh, you had a parking ticket a few years ago. You're not law-abiding then, are you? Oh, you said something mean about the orange one on Twitter. Oh, you can't love your country then, can you? Be interesting to see the scope of this operation. But the potential is dystopian. I mean, let's consider the real human cost of the policy. So, imagine a situation. You've saved for years. You can't afford to go to the Super Bowl all the time. So you save for a few years so you can go to take your daughter to her first Super Bowl, right? It's a dream of yours, a memory you've planned to make. You're legally resident. But let's say your wife is waiting on a visa renewal. So a bureaucratic delay. It's got nothing to do with her good standing. It's entirely about the bureaucracy, right? So you're at the gate. There's an ICE agent there. They hear your accent, or for whatever other reason, think, "Oh, I'm gonna clobber them." Ask for your papers. You've got yours. That's fine. Your wife left hers in the hotel. Like, who brings a passport to a game, right? 20 minutes later, you're in a sterile security trailer. Your daughter's crying outside, confused and terrified. Game starts, anthem plays, the roar of the crowd fills the stadium. You're still sat there outside in handcuffs, right? That's not a hypothetical far-fetched scenario. This is basically what the US Home Secretary is promising to do. Trump has already recently said, and I quote, "I hate my opponents and I don't want the best for them." This is not a president who wants to unite his country or even pay lip service to the idea of national unity. He wants to create a country where everyone swears fealty to him, and if they won't, he will make their lives as unbearable as he physically can. He promised to go after undocumented migrants. He's now expanded that threat to all migrants. It's clear from his language he wants to deny basic rights even to Americans who won't worship at his feet. Wrecking the Super Bowl is a big step. Interestingly, the Super Bowl organisers seem to be pushing back because they've hired a migrant performer for the halftime show. Republicans are raging about that. But it will be poor consolation if the event plays host to empty seats because ICE have half the crowd corralled into makeshift detention areas outside the stadium. And ICE will be using the event to learn lessons for further crackdowns as well, of course, won't they? Like I say, this is about dividing society in a very forced way, and they'll be looking at how far can they push the American people. Will the American people push back? Will there be a backlash to this? And the problem is not isolated to the United States either. The far right in Britain and around Europe will be watching and formulating their own plans as well, because they want to do the same. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.